Welcome to In the News for August 20th, 2021. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
Good morning, Brett. This is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD.
Jeff, let's start off today with what I like to call a public service announcement.
A PSA,
There's a couple
yes.
of times when you have a link that I feel like is important that we just need to jump right in and let people know about. And this is specifically for any of our listeners that are T-Mobile customers, right?
Right. Yeah, this is a tough one. You know, the hackers got a lot of the goods from T-Mobile. And although the company hasn't described exactly what they got, it sounds like it includes names, phone numbers, social security numbers, personal information, a whole lot of stuff. This Washington Post article that I linked to has some great advice for what you can do if you're a T-Mobile customer, things like changing your password and your PIN. You know, one of the scariest things that they mention in here is many folks use two-factor authentication as a way to protect yourself against hackers. But unfortunately, the second factor in the two-factor authentication is often something being texted to your cell phone. So when hackers get a lot of your cell phone information, and they didn't directly get access to people's phones, but as this Washington Post article points out, if the hackers, they have enough information between your name and address and your social security number that if they could get your password from somewhere else, because some people use the same password on multiple services, then they could sort of spoof your cell phone. And at that point, it's all over. It's a bad situation. So there's a lot of good practical advice in this article, including things talking to credit bureaus about, freezing your credit so that nobody else tries to open up a new credit card under your name and stuff like that. So if you're a T-Mobile customer, you'll want to read this article.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for linking to this and gifting the link. A lot of people have to. you mentioned that a couple of times.
This is something both the New York Times and the Washington Post are doing. I happen to subscribe to both the New York Times and the Washington Post.
I know you do.
But I know some folks don't. And they have this feature that you have, I think the Washington Post lets you provide links to up to 10 articles a month so that anybody can click that link and read the article. And so it works perfectly for me because since I only have about 4 in the news posts a month, I doubt I'm going to link to more than 10 Washington Post articles. So anyone can read this. You don't have to subscribe to the Post to read the article that I linked to today.
Yeah, this is just scary. So anyway, thank you for the link because it's great that people can, because this is a story. I love when reporters or authors give practical advice, right? The headline is always, oh my goodness, 40 million hackers. And this is a terrible breach. Nothing, not to downplay that at all. But I just love the fact that it was Chris Velasco, it looks like, when he wrote this, not only, of course, it's a scary headline here that there's a huge data breach here, but I just really appreciate the fact that you link to this and he gives that practical advice. Change your password and PIN. Of course, that's one of the first things. And by the way, you and I talk about this all the time. It's so much easier to quickly change your password and PIN if you use a password manager like 1Password or LastPass. The freezing your credit, I just thought was fantastic. I really didn't think about that, but the author links to where you should go. And then you mentioned, the two-factor authentication. So I didn't want to dwell on that too long, but just thank you for linking to that, because so many times you and I know people get really nervous and scared about this, what's going to happen. And this article does provide some very practical advice. And thanks to you gifting the link, people can read through that if they are a T-Mobile customer. That's some good stuff on there. All right, so next, I thought it was good. You had several leaks here when you started off, Jeff, about I think I call it Apple theft deterrents, right? Because you had several stories here. First of all, this is a story here: an AirTag helped find a stolen motorcycle.
This is a typical story. Yeah, this is what you would expect. That using the AirTag the way it was intended to be used to find a motorcycle that was stolen, which is a good story.
We talked about a scooter last week, didn't we? Somebody used it. Yeah.
And I think I linked to a bicycle the week before, these sort of portable things that can easily be stolen. What was interesting about this article on the motorcycle is, of course, he recovered his motorcycle, which is the goal. But he also had a theory, and it was just a theory, that the fact that when an AirTag is traveling in something with somebody who's not the owner, so that the AirTag isn't used for nefarious purposes to track somebody else, it will actually beep. And his theory was that the beeping AirTag may have actually alerted the thief that he was being tracked. and resulted in the thief sort of giving up the motorcycle and stealing a different one. So it never occurred to me that feature could have a deterrent effect. So that's interesting. But I think the real reason that you're mentioning this is not for these stories, which are typical, but I thought it was interesting, almost funny, that the New York Post had a story where these Apple tracking devices were being used by the bad guys. Now, it was goodness. In this story, it's bad guys versus bad guys. There's no honor among thieves,
it's
right?
So odd.
So one set of robbers using an Apple Watch to track another set of, some drug dealers to try to steal from the drug dealers. So nobody really is the hero of the story, but they attached the Apple Watch to the bumper of the guy that they thought was the money man for the drug dealers. And so then they were able to follow him around town, and sure enough found that he was at a hotel, and they showed up and they stole all the cash. And you're showing on the screen right now for folks watching the video, the thieves in front of all of their cash. But what was funny to me about this article was sort of the karma of it, because on the one hand, they used technology to steal $500,000. On the other hand, this actually happened at the end of last year, and the reason we're hearing about it now is because the criminal charges are coming out in court. And the prosecutor said that he was able to piece together the story by using their cell phone records to track them, by using their devices to see where they were. So, the technology giveth and the technology taketh away for the criminals.
I love it. Exactly. I love it here because, I'm not going to make a judgment call on the intelligence level of anyone. But one of the the 7-person crew based in Hudson Valley, they were able to follow this exactly because they even have the name of the gentleman here. He connected that Apple Watch with his own AT&T account, which you normally would if you're using the Apple Watch for proper items. But that's how they were able to track all of this, in great detail. Just incredible on that. Quickly, I'm going to go back to the motorcycle. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, it's something that you and I talk about, using these AirTags or an Apple Watch or anything to use, to find my. What I like about this story is that the owner of the motorcycle was able to track exactly the location of where the motorcycle was, but he stopped at that point, right? And he called the police officers. And I just like to emphasize that, you might be able to see exactly where the motorcycle is or the scooter or whatever it is that has been taken, but it's good to make sure you've got some backup before you go in. And then, just like you said, it's like that AirTag, he found it was ultimately abandoned, just like you were talking about. So anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that. Like, it's great to track these things, but if you can find the location, it's good. Like we talked about this last week, to go to the police department, the officers, and explain to them how you were able to track it, and make sure that you got some backup before going in.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the last thing quickly, this was an interesting story as well. Apparently, a lady, some criminal broke into a house. The lady came home, or young woman came home, and confronted the person that broke in, and the person ended up handcuffing this young lady. But she was able to use her Apple Watch to call her mother or summon her mother and ultimately get some help.
Yeah, exactly. So, once again, and I've seen other stories about this too, that if you're in a situation, whether it's because, you're in there was a story weeks ago of a man that was in the middle of the river and, he needed help, but he had his Apple Watch on, or if it's a burglar. But if you've got that watch on your hand, it gives you an access to the outside world, whether you're calling a loved one or whether you're calling the police, which you can do just by sort of holding down the button on the side. So, if you find yourself in a panicky situation and you are fortunate enough to have an Apple Watch, keep in mind that it does give you a means of escape. And clearly it was critically important to this poor woman in New Jersey. So,
right. Well, thanks for linking to these Apple theft deterrent components on here, Jeff. I just thought it was great, and I like covering that because it's just neat to kind of know that that capability and the technology is there. So from Apple theft deterrent, let's go back to something I know we've covered several times on sort of the spatial audio component here. You linked to a short little piece of, John Gruber usually has short pieces here on his blog, Daring Fireball. And he was talking about how Netflix now is jumping on the spatial audio bandwagon, which I am all about. I say go for it.
Yeah, me too. There's two ways that Apple is doing sort of related technology. We talked recently about how in Apple Music you can listen to a song and they're using the especially if you have a nicer AirPods Pro, that you can sort of
Yeah.
see the sound can become 3D around you, and that's one thing, and that's neat. But spatial audio for films is nice because it makes the sound appear to come from a specific location. And the
Right.
perfect example of that is an iPad rather, that if you're watching a movie or a TV show on your iPad, when you're wearing your headphones, the sound, first of all, it really seems to come from that device. I mentioned this today, and this happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
I'll be watching something and I'll turn my head and the sound will move as well. And it makes me think for a second, oh, wait a minute. Am I not using my AirPods to listen to this? Is my iPad just making noise? Because it's just so realistic. But it's not just a parlor trick. It actually, for me, and John Gruber used this phrase too, that it makes it it's a game changer for immersiveness, because it makes the sound just seem so rich and around you. It adds to the experience. It's a subtle thing, but it makes a big difference. So the story that Gruber is linking to is that not only is this available for Apple TV Plus shows and certain YouTube videos, but Netflix is going to be rolling it out too, which just makes perfect sense to make because folks watch Netflix on their iPhones and iPads and stuff all the time, and this will make it so much more immersive. So I'm glad that this is starting to catch on. It just makes for a better viewing experience.
We've talked a lot about spatial audio as applying to music tracks, right? And Apple has been rolling this out, and it's sort of is a technology that they're using to say this is a much better experience, whereas we go from mono to stereo, and then several other technologies have come out in the spatial audio. But like you said, just now that it's applying to even the movies component, all of us, several of us grew up going to movie theaters, with that THX, and having the sound. And
specifically so you could get the surround sound that you couldn't get at home. That was,
Exactly. And now that we're having this capability, even watching it on an iPad, for crying out loud, is really interesting. I'm amazed about it. In fact, I remember, for some of us, you and I have been talking about this. If you have Apple Music or subscribe to Apple Music, I know you do, I don't, but I'm not able to listen to spatial audio. But last week, I just wanted to point out, we didn't talk about this, but you linked to a neat little video from the singer Billie Eilish that I do have AirPods Pro. So I was able to listen to this video, and it really is incredible to hear like the sound kind of bouncing off different ways or coming at you from different areas. Nifty little video. We didn't talk about it last week, but it was good that you linked to it.
They did a good job with the video too, because they have her sort of reflecting off of mirrors and stuff. The visuals of the video gives you sort of a 3D sense in a visual sense while you're listening to it, and the audio is also in a 3D sense. This is the one that I linked to at the end of my post last week. At the end of my post today, I linked to a little video about a movie called CODA. Have you seen this yet?
I haven't, but I got to tell you, I've seen it being advertised, but I'm definitely going to start watching it now.
Yeah, CODA stands for Child of Deaf Adults. It is a fantastic movie. It swept all the Sundance Awards earlier this year, and not only the critics' favorite, but also the audience favorite. So that's what caught my attention. But I enjoyed it so much. I mean, not to give away too much, but the star of the show is a teenager played by Amelia Jones, who's fantastic. My son and I watched her in a TV show called Lock and Key recently. But she's great, and so she can speak and hearing, but her brother and both of her parents are deaf, and they're played by deaf actors, so it's incredibly realistic. And it's just a great story. On the one hand, it's got great music in it, but on the other hand, it's just a fascinating story. It's touching. It is funny. It stars Marlee Matlin, who everybody knows. I mean, she's got to be the most famous deaf actor of our time.
Yeah.
But the father in this show is played by an actor named Troy Kotsur, who's been around a while. He was in The Mandalorian for one episode, for example.
He looks great.
He is fantastic. Without spoiling anything, let me just say, when everybody listening to this podcast should really watch the movie, because it's fantastic. But if you have Apple TV Plus, but he particularly is, I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, he should definitely be up for an Oscar or something like that. And without spoiling anything, let me just say there's two parts of the movie that are so funny that you will find yourself barrel rolling. And I read afterwards that both of those scenes in which he is signing something with his hands, he sort of improvised the way he did it. And you don't have to be deaf to see what he's doing with his hands. And I have never laughed so hard. So very strong recommendation. But in talking about spatial audio, I actually, after watching the movie with my family, we all loved it, I then watched some pieces of it again on my iPad. And of course, being on Apple TV Plus, it has spatial audio. And so once again, it felt very immersive. So another good example of the immersive stuff, but also just a really good movie. It's also in theaters too, for folks that are going to movies. Not just nice. The pandemic right now, you can go see it in a movie theater too. So
I just love it. It looks so precious right here. She's on stage singing, and the father is in the audience, and he looks around to see the reaction of other audience members to his daughter singing, because he can't hear her, but he can just tell that the audience is really enjoying his daughter singing. Anyway, it just that scene right there, you link to. Okay, so that's good.
Strong recommendation. Everybody add that one to your list. CODA, CODA.
CODA. Excellent. Okay. The last thing I thought that I love that you linked to here, you don't do a lot of puzzles or, sort of the other stuff, because you and I typically like to talk about like how can the iPad and iPhone be used maybe more from a work, professional, practical standpoint. But oh my goodness, I'm so glad you linked to this. This looks so fun.
Had you tried it yet, or have you tried it yet, Brett?
I haven't. I don't have Apple Arcade, and I got to tell you, this is almost getting, I mean, you and I have talked about like the Apple One subscription and everything, and I'm probably going to have to jump on the bandwagon. Yeah. I'm already paying for the Apple TV. I might as well get the Apple Arcade and the other components.
It's not much more expensive to jump to Apple One. So many of the Apple Arcade games are great games. I mean, they're these incredible graphics, and I watch my kids play them. It's amazing, and they're just way too complicated. There was a time when I was good at video games, and that time has passed. But what I do love is just sort of like the slow.
You can do this.
I can do it at my own pace and stuff like that. I've always loved crossword puzzles. So this particular game that you're showing off is called Wurdweb, WURDWEB. And it looks like a crossword puzzle because you see the words that are either horizontal or vertical that intersect on letters. It's not a crossword puzzle game in that there's no definitions or something. There's different modes of the game, and it has to do with placing the words, and it can get more complicated when you have longer words. But it's a fun little game. I started playing it.
Neat.
It was one of those things that you just start playing it and you realize that like an hour has passed and you're still playing it and you're having a great time. So I was glad to see a review of this, because otherwise I would have never known about the game. And it looks like one that I'll be playing when you're looking for something to do for a few minutes. So if you have Apple Arcade, either because you subscribe specifically to that $5 a month service, or because it's part of Apple One or one of the other subscriptions that you have, it's definitely worth checking out. I enjoy it, especially if you enjoy words as I do.
I was watching the video on here. To me, it looks more like kind of a mashup between a crossword puzzle and Scrabble. Right?
Yeah, it probably has more to do with Scrabble. I agree with that. It's very similar. And
they give you the words though.
Yeah, it's got these pieces.
You got to place them.
Yeah, in Scrabble, when you place your word on a special piece, you get more points. Or here, when you place your word on a special piece, you get more possible words that you can play. And that's good, because when you're trying to play words on the board, you don't want to have a short list of words, because then you're limited. You want to have a long list of words. So anyway, it's a fun game.
That's Wurdweb. The review on Cult of Mac that you link to is great, and then you can go to wurdweb.com, WURD. It's almost like they're trying to invent new words, right, to make sure they get the URL. So true, Wurd, WURD, wurdweb.com. Anyway, it just looks fascinating. I'm so glad that you linked to that. It looks so fun. All right, but a couple of bonuses. One thing you didn't even mention in your In the News post, Jeff, but I saw earlier this week that you reviewed some updates to an app that I know both you and I, this goes from now the fun side to the more practical side, right?
Right.
So PDF Expert is an excellent app that I know both of you and I have recommended for years and years, and it just keeps getting better. Riedel continues to do some improvements, and they add some construction tools, like literally like for construction people, I guess, but you did a great twist on this and showing how it can be used for a variety of purposes as well.
Yeah, PDF Expert, I use it just every single day in my law practice. I'm always reading PDF documents. I'm always annotating them. I'm organizing them. I mean, I use it all the time. But and most of the tools that I use are, I guess, pretty simple. Highlight, a pen tool to annotate, and things like that. But so what they've added now, what they call the construction tools. First of all, there's a measurement tool. So I mean, this one comes up all the time that, I'm working on some lawsuit where there's a document produced that's like blueprints or a floor plan or a design of a parking lot, and they're all drawn to scale. And once you know what the scale is, this app, either by automatically doing it or you can set it manually. You can say, this distance on this document is equal to what, a foot or a meter or whatever.
Right.
And then once you have that, you can then use the measure tool to say, like, so what is this room? So this room is 12 by 14, or you can draw a square or other shape, and it will say this is the area of that area. So it's, this is something I've literally been in depositions before when I've been trying to sort of figure out and guesstimate design, sizes and stuff.
Right.
So
right.
that's a really good tool. But so the measurement
good.
alone would, if that was the only new feature, I would be thrilled. But they've also improved the ability to create shapes, which is nice because sometimes I'll have, in fact, I'm literally doing this in one of my cases right now, that I have an overhead aerial view of a parking lot where an accident occurred. And then I want to be able to, block out some things and shade some things so that during a deposition or during written discovery, I can, refer to this area that's shaded this color or this area. And so, it used to be in years past that you could either do it by hand, which would not look very professional, or you could hire a graphics professional. But now I can use these tools to draw all these nice little shapes and stuff like that. So it's nice that they updated with lots more shape tools. I mean, just one, for example, is the cloud shape tool, which is something we've seen before, but it allows you to not just put a square around something, but actually put like a little, clouded edge shape that's sort of, it's in the bottom left of this one here. So it just adds a little bit more emphasis. So these tools are great, and I look forward to using them. But if they're perhaps the best part of I'll just mention the call out tool, which you have on screen now. This is totally useful. You'll want to point to something like to a schematic of a part in a product's liability case or something like that. And you want to point to something specific, but then go off to the side and write something. And you can, in the old days, I would just, make an arrow, make some words, do it all manually, and that works. But this tool takes like a second to use. It's so quick.
Beautiful.
You just, hold down where the arrow starts, move your finger off to the side and let go where the words go. And
I love that.
Quick, and it's done. And so I'm going to use this because it's just so fast to do. So I love that feature. But what I put at the very conclusion of this post is when I was reading the blog for the developer Riedel, they said that this construction feature is just, this update is the first step towards creating unique tools for all sorts of professionals, including attorneys. So I don't know what they have up their sleeve, because frankly, the existing tools in PDF Expert already work fantastic for my law practice. But if they have people, hopefully they've been contacting some attorneys. Feel free to contact me if you want to.
I was going to say, that, we're here. Hello.
Exactly. With some tips, I would love to see a toolbar added in the future with, things that they think that attorneys would find useful. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So the development of this app has been fantastic for many, many, many years now. And I love that more is coming in the future. I knew this was coming because we was actually, they reached out to me last year. I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. They did a monthly sponsorship of my website. And they mentioned that they were moving to a subscription model. So you can get a lot of the features for free, but if you pay an annual subscription, you get even more. And they said that with the subscription model, they were planning like a whole host of features coming out in the future. And so this clearly is one of the first, and they've got more coming. So if you're trying to decide, is it going to be worth me spending $50 a year? I think yes. Frankly, I think yes, just because it allows you to create your own custom tool, custom toolbars, which I mentioned in a review last year. But with even more features coming, this is what you want, right? You want to have a subscription so that you can continue to develop, to encourage the developer to make the product better, and you want to see the product getting better. This is exactly the model that we want for iPad and iPhone apps. So I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the PDF Expert app, you can get it for free now, and
you can use a ton of features for free.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's limited though. It doesn't have all of those customizable features like what you're talking about. But man, $50 a year, that's a fantastic price for everything that you get. And again, I just remind people, like Jeff and I, you and I have been using a lot of these PDF apps over all the years that we've been doing the iPad, and we're not going to recommend something unless we know that it really works. And what I love about it is that it works even seamlessly with other PDFs. Like if I do something on my iPad in PDF Expert, I can then open that PDF on my Mac or my Windows computer in Adobe Acrobat or whatever other, and everything transfers. In other words, people get a little nervous and like, well, I want to stay within the same apps that I'm using. And I get that, I understand. But again, we've used many, many, many apps, and this is really fantastic. Totally, totally worth it. And like you said, we just keep supporting a developer like Readle in that subscription, which is really great. So maybe we should have talked about that. I mean, I just love it, and you can tell. I think people can tell how passionate we are about this app, and I'm glad that you reviewed that and added those new components in there in your app. And then one thing that you didn't link to as well, but I saw this week, and I just wanted to mention it. My wife pretty much primarily uses her iPad, and she loves the Paprika recipe app. I don't know if you
Oh, I've
use
heard of that
that,
one.
but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's really, really fantastic. Even to the point where she can take a picture of like a recipe, Jeff, from a cookbook or something, and Paprika will organize that with all the ingredients and then the instructions and everything. She has been using Paprika for a long time and
Been
probably
around
will
for a very long
continue.
time. Yeah.
Right. But John Voorhees, which I know we're both fans of, in Mac Stories earlier this week had reviewed another recipe app called, I guess, Mela or Mela. I don't know if it's meal or what. Mela, Mela. And the other reason that it caught my eye, not because we like John so much and what he reviews, but this is from the developer of the Reader RSS app, Reeder. I don't know if you use that. I use it almost
Yeah, I've used it in
exclusively
the
every
past.
single
Hmm.
day. I
Hmm.
love the app. He has been doing this for many, many years. Anyway, it was kind of an honorable mention, if you will, because I saw this there. And John talks about how he's used Paprika and how he transferred some of the recipes to Mila. I'm going to buy this. It's only $5. This is not a subscription. So this Silvio Rizzi is his name that he's been developing the Reader app for so long. But I'm definitely going to buy it just because I would buy everything that he as a developer would do. And I'm going to let my wife try this out and see if she likes it better. And here's an example of what I was saying. You can just take
Oh,
a picture of
yeah.
a recipe and it'll pull the pieces and parts from it, scan in a cookbook, and then it'll add that into your recipe component. And
Huh.
once you get your sort of your library of recipes, you can then do a search. My wife will like search, okay, well, I've got, elbow macaroni and, spinach. Like, what can I do? And obviously she can pull that up. There's a lot of services like that you can Google, but this is like your own little kind of a personal cookbook that you have. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I know you follow John just like I do on Mac Stories, but that's the
Yeah, I had
Mela
missed
app.
this story this week, and I'm just realizing the name Mela instead of meal Meal. It's
That's what
Mela
I'm thinking.
Mela. Yeah, clever. So good for
Again,
him.
it's like they're trying to find words that like haven't been taken by URLs. I
Exactly.
guess
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but it's like anyway, it was cool because he has Reader as the app, and it's Reeder as opposed to okay, you
Right.
get it.
Right.
I
Right.
think it's great. Okay, great. So in the know, a couple of tips. As people know, if you've been listening this week and last week, I have been on family vacation, which has been great. We've been up in northern Maine. And obviously, we all have our phones, and we've been taking a bunch of pictures. So this isn't anything new. This has been around for a long time, but it's just so helpful. And I find people maybe don't realize this. But since my wife, my daughter, my son, and I have been taking pictures of different things we've done, we've gone four-wheeling and, swinging off of rope swings into the lake. It's like everybody has pictures, and we want to all see them, right? Like they got pictures that I don't have, but I still want to see them. So you can create shared photo albums or shared albums. And because we're all on iPhone, it's very easy to do. You got to make sure it's turned on in your iCloud settings. Just go into the iCloud settings and turn on shared albums. And then actually this time my daughter created the shared album and then just invited all of us to join that shared album. And then I could go into my photo roll on my iPhone and then I could just say add to the shared item, the shared album. I still had my photos in my photo roll, but then they were also shared in the shared album, which doesn't take additional space in iCloud, which is really nifty that Apple does that. But it was so neat that it was so easy for us to share the photos so that we could look at it, create our own albums if we wanted to, the single albums. You can also share not only with people that have iPhones, but we can share some albums with friends. We created a separate album, to share with friends back home. But you can also create a specific URL, an iCloud URL, so that you can send that URL to anybody, people that even have Android devices, for example, and they can
Oh,
click to a website where they can view the album, the pictures that you put in that specific album.
hmm.
So I just wanted to mention that as something we've been using like crazy here. And one quick like little bonus tip that I had on here. Couple of the times, we've shared pictures, but we've also been sharing some videos. And sometimes, you start the video and there's a lot of dead space at the beginning or at the end. So I wanted to quickly trim a video, but I don't know if the Photos app specifically has a trim function. I'm sure that it does.
It
But
does, yeah.
instead of doing that, what I did is I went into a video in my Photos app and I said, I want to edit this. And if you do a share, one of the options, or I think it's the ellipsis there, it says share to the iMovie app, right? Which is a free app from Apple. I love that because it has a few additional editing components and a very easy to use trim function in there. And so what I did is it was just so seamless. I just wanted to add that in here. I would pull up a video on my Photos app, say share to iMovie. It immediately goes into iMovie. I can do whatever fix up and transitions and all of the stuff that I wanted to do. And then when I hit said done, it just automatically put it back into my photo roll. In other words, it was just such a seamless workflow that I really enjoyed. And then I had the original video, as long as it was, because I didn't want to delete it yet. But then I had the new trimmed or edited video in there as well. And I just like using you can do some basic edits inside the Photos app, but using that iMovie app was really it just gave me a few additional components in there. But it was so seamless. I didn't have to like jump back and forth, all the way. It was just so seamless the way that it works. So that's my tip: shared albums, and then even a little bonus tip of using iMovie to quickly edit some of your photos in your photo roll.
Yeah, I've done the second one. I've done iMovie before, and it's nice because although iMovie on your iPhone, just because of the limited size of the screen, you're not going to create, a motion picture, but it is a great quick way. It used to be
you
that
can do a lot.
iMovie was if you had something that was recorded in the wrong orientation, like you weren't holding your camera in the wrong way. Nowadays, you can turn in. I believe you can, or maybe this is coming to Photos, but you can do something quick in iMovie, like add a transition. Yes. You can cut something in between the video, which you can't do within Photos. You can put a title in the beginning of it, but
exactly.
I mean, in just 5 minutes, you can add some features to make your video look so much more professional. The first part of your tip, though, the shared albums, this has been around for a while, and I'm so glad you're mentioning it today, because it's not really something that I've used. And now that I'm thinking about it, both of my kids have iPhones. The next time that we do a family trip, I'm going to definitely try this, because you're right. Otherwise, you just don't get the pictures that they take. And, sometimes they've got some good ones. So I like it.
And again, it doesn't take up additional space, which is great, right? Apple was very smart on that. Now, the only thing that you have to remember, like, if I take more pictures today, I've got to go in and manually select those photos and then say add to the shared album.
But that's a good thing, because you might not want to share everything.
Exactly.
You might decide what you share, what you don't share. So I like that.
Exactly. And I do too. I'm just saying that it's not an automated thing, which I think is a good thing by design, because you only would share the ones that you really want to put into that shared album. But then it's always there. Again, it's not taking up any space. And by the way, you can favorite different photos. You can add comments. And so what I like about it, you can always, you've been able to do this for a while, add captions, or you can add a comment to the photos. And then if everybody that's involved in that shared album, they get a little update on their phone, a notification that said, hey, somebody liked this photo or somebody added a comment. And it's just a great way to share in that experience. And then you all have access to those videos and pictures. So good. Yeah, I'm glad that was a good app.
Well, it's a coincidence today, Brett, that we both happen to be sharing tips about the Photos app. I didn't know that you were going to be sharing this one, but I had decided earlier this week. So the product that I am recommending today is made by a company called Studio Nate, which makes fantastic products. But this particular one is called, the core product is called Glif. Glif, and it is a piece of strong plastic that's incredibly well engineered to sort of work like a clamp, and it clamps on your iPhone. It fits any size iPhone, even if you have a case on. And then once it's clamped onto your phone, it has on the two sides of it and also on the back. So I think there are 2 or 3 different locations. There's the tripod mount. So you could use it with anything that works with a tripod. You could literally put it on a tripod. And that's nice. I mean, the picture you're showing right now is something I've done before using something called the Joby Gorilla Pad, which is just sort of has these 3 legs that you can sort of clamp around pretty much anything. But that's not really my tip today, although it's part of it. My real tip is the whole package, which is the Glif itself costs $28, and you can get it on Amazon or you can get it from Studio Neat. But they have a package, the premium package, which for $55 gives you the Glif and the hand grip and the wrist strap. And this is what I recommend. And here's why. If you're taking video for just, something short, like what you were describing, you can just hold up your iPhone with your hand. It works great. Right. Do your best not to shake it too much. But if you're taking like a longer video, if it's, a video of a child in a school play, or, your child is playing, soccer or basketball or something like that, and you want to record most of the game, your hand's going to get tired holding it up from the side after a while. And then you're going to shake more, and it's going to affect the quality. But But this the Glif with the hand grip that I'm describing, which Studio Nate sells, you sort of attach it underneath it, and you can hold it with your hand, and it's so much easier to hold your hand sort of in a fist. And I have held it for an incredibly long period of time, and it works really, really well. So if you're going to be taking video that's more than just a few minutes long, this works great. And I reviewed this. The review you're showing now was back in 2017. I mean, here we are 4 years later.
Oh my goodness.
And I was thinking about it this week because the with the school year starting again, both of my kids started school this week, and so they're going to be doing school sports soon. And although I haven't used this much over the summer, I need to dust it off because I'm going to be using it again. It's a good value. You can use it for a long time. The Glif works with any size iPhone. So, unless Apple changes the iPhone to be 6 feet tall, it will continue to work with future models. So, it's worth the money. I've used it a ton and I highly recommend it. It's not a gimbal, professional movie folks will have something called a gimbal, which actually will adjust for shakiness by counter shaking so that it stays perfectly flat. It's not that. But again, you don't need to spend all the money on a gimbal. Just something like this, which makes it so much easier to hold your camera in your hand. I get great results with it. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend.
So it looks like what is great is that it can extend out, right? So like you said, it can fit any like iPhone size, and then it has that clamp that looks very stardy on there.
It's
if you're
very sturdy.
Recommending this, right? Then I do like the fact, you can get all kinds of fancy tripods, big, large things, but I love this. And I know you've talked about this before. So I might have to do a quick little investment. You're going to cost me money today because it is just so neat that it looks like it can fit in your pocket, or in a briefcase or something, and then just pull it out, pop the iPhone in there, clamp it down. And then that you got something that you can hold there that's really sturdy. Plus, it looks
in fact,
nice.
it's very pocketable.
Handle.
Yeah, I've done that all the time. I slip it in a pocket and then I go to like my daughter's track meet or whatever. And then you just pull it out of your pocket, attach it to your phone, and then you're there and you're holding it and you take a video and it's great. And then once you have it, you can share that video using the tip that you described. So it all works together. It all
works together. Jeff, thanks as always. This was so fun. We'll talk with you next week.
Great talking to you. Bye-bye, everybody.